One last thing before I put this speaker board and cloth back in the radio. You have to get holes into the cloth where the screws go through. And you can't do it by just running a screw through it. If you do, you'll twist up the material and you can't drill it. So what's the best way to get those holes through the fabric so the screws just slip right through? Well, I keep around an old soldering tip that's no good. But boy, I'll tell you, it works great. If you stick it in your iron, and then you just take that old tip and just stick it right down. Find out where the hole goes, and just stick it right down through there. It'll melt a hole right down through. Let me get this in the soldering iron. I'll give you a little demo here. I'll do one hole here. I took my marker. I found the hole, and I took my marker and just put a little dot on the other side. All we got to do now is just take this soldering iron tip and just burn right down through it, just like that. Give it a little twist. Now, don't use your good tips for this. That's all there is to it. Nothing to it. Don't use your good tips for this. Use an old. Always keep an old tip around. And look at that piece of solder that was even on there, left over from a long time ago. Incidentally, I was going to go ahead and use Phillips screws to put this in, Phillips head screws and flat washers. But when I got to the hardware store, I decided to go with these. I can put them in easier with a small socket and a spin tight, or a little wrench, socket holder, and of course the flat washers. So if they ever rust up later on, there'll be two ways of getting them out, either with the socket or a screwdriver. The speaker mounting board is back in. Unfortunately, I was unable to use the flat washers. The screws would not have been long enough to do the job. The next size screw that was available at the hardware store would have been too long. Fortunately, the head of the screw is large enough to actually act as a washer itself anyway. So we don't have the screws buried deep into the wood. It worked out pretty good. So now it's time to take out the turntable, which is going to be a little bit difficult to see because it's way up in here. I don't know if you can see the bottom of it there. And that thing is held in. Remember now, this is not original to the set. So it's held in with that, this is stud coming down. I hope I can get that in the camera. The stud coming down, it's got a snap ring on it. There's one on each side, one there and one over right there. Okay, she's out, and pretty dirty looking. Got a big coat of grease or something on it. First thing I have to do is get it cleaned up so I can work on it. I don't know much about turntables, very, very little. Okay, I'm one of these guys that figures, what the heck, why waste time? I've got some of this fabuloso stuff that the wife says is good. I'm just going to shoot it to it. The heck with it. Just shoot it to it, see what happens. Can't make it any worse than it is. That's the way I look at it. Well, it's starting to clean up already. Let's get this lamp over here. Look at here. I'm wiping it down. She's starting to get nice, and you can see the difference in color. Not too shabby. Even the top of the knob is cleaned up a little bit. They might be in a lot better shape when they get done than I originally thought. I've got to remove the platter, and it's held on with this snap ring. Let me get this lamp a little closer where you can see. It's held on with that snap ring right there, and I've got it partially removed. Let's see if I can get it the rest of the way out of here. You just kind of gotta get that snap ring to come out, and this platter should lift right off. Alright, as expected, the platter just lifted right off, and you can see a lot of the spray fluid that I sprayed got down underneath there. That was the reason it had to come off. So we'll give it a good wipe out. Looks pretty good shape. The large wheel is turned by the motor, and the small wheel on top presses against the lip on the inside of the platter, all the way around the inside, and turns the platter. So the edges, they look like they're in excellent shape. The rubber's even fairly soft. So I took a little bit of alcohol and cleaned along the edges all the way around both of them. I just spun them around and kept cleaning and cleaning until they got nice and clean again. They look pretty good. Also, I used this brush right here. This is kind of a handy dandy brush I picked up at Lowe's, oh gosh, I guess a couple of years ago. They last a long time. I use them for stripping finish on a cabinet, radio cabinet. Nylon bristles, and after the finish softens with lacquer thinner, if I have a couple of spots that are a little tough to get off, I'll just hit it with this brush. But not only does it act as a good finish stripper, but it works well to clean knobs. Look how nice and clean those knobs came out. And all I used was dishwashing liquid in the sink with that scrub brush. Real nice. The inside of the platter edge, all the way around, over the years, of course, has picked up some rubber and a lot of dirt from this wheel right here as it spun the platter. So the inside of that lip should be cleaned with alcohol. Take it, put some on a paper towel or a rag, and just give it a good cleaning all the way around. Now comes a part I don't know too much about. This bearing, it's a 5 ball bearing, fits all the way down this shaft right here, all the way down, and it sits at the bottom down there. And I removed it, and it looks to me like it, I don't know, it looks to me like it's never had any grease or oil on it, or if it did, it's all evaporated and gone by now. So I'm going to have to rely on a little bit of common sense here. I'm going to put a touch of grease on each one of those balls and set it back down in there the way it was. It just seems to me that a ball bearing requires grease. And then on top of that is this flat washer, and you can see that there's a line. I don't know if you can make that line out all the way around it, but that sits on top of the bearings like that. So I'll put a tiny bit of grease on between those two. I mean a tiny bit, not a whole lot. And then of course the platter goes down over the top of the entire mess, and the gear mechanism, the surface of the gear mechanism, right there. Let me get something to point with here. This mechanism right here, this surface right here, or this one here, I can't remember which. Let me see here. Let's see which one is the right size. Yeah, it's the outside area. This right here would ride against that flat washer on the opposite side. Now I notice that also there's no grease on this shaft right here, so I'm going to put a tiny bit of grease down in the bottom down there. I don't want a ton of it up here at the top where it might, you know, come through the top of the platter and the spindle and ooze out around this area here. We don't want that, so we'll put a little bit down in there, just enough to basically coat it and see what happens. Alright, I put a little bit of grease on the top, and I put a little bit of grease on the bottom. Not a whole lot. I used a jeweler's screwdriver and some, I don't know what kind of grease that is. I got it from a friend of mine. He put a little bit in a cup like that for me. He says it's very good, so we'll see what happens. Alright, we got the grease on the bottom of the flat washer. The bearing's already down in there. We'll just drop the old flat washer right down in there on top of it. Now we'll put a little bit of grease down inside there and around this surface. I'm using a Q-tip to grease down inside the hole. Not too far, not too far. I just dipped it in the old grease over here, and also put a little bit around this silver area over here, down at the bottom. It's about ready to put back in place now. Don't get grease on the idler wheels. Don't do that. It'll cause the platter to slip, and the motor will be driven and driving and slipping and slipping and slipping, and your record will not play at the proper speed. Let's check out this motor on this turntable. What I've done is, the red and the black wire are the two wires that feed that motor. I went ahead and hooked an alligator wire, or gator wire, to the multimeter lead, the black multimeter lead on one side. I did that so I can have my at least one hand free while I test this thing. And we will take the red lead and touch it to this one right here and see if we get some kind of a reading. Look at there, almost 29 ohms. that tells us that motor winding is good. Okay, I think about the last but not least thing that I can do to this that I know to do. I do know from just growing up and seeing various things over the years, I do know that this thing right here moves down this slot as part of the changing mechanism or the spinning mechanism. The speed changes, I think. I'm not sure 100%. Anyway, you can see there's a bunch of old dried grease here. It's just hardened up, and it's really crap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clean off as much as I can here with alcohol and an acid brush, and then lay some new grease down along here. I don't know how far. Apparently it doesn't go very far because I don't see any grease down in this area, so I'll probably lay it down to about right where that gear is. I'm not going to put any grease on the gear. I don't know if it's required. I don't see any old grease anywhere. I'm just going to go by what I see. And I'm sure there's some kind of special grease used for this, a lot thicker, a lot oilier and stickier, but I don't have any of that, so I'll use what I got and hope for the best. I've got it as clean as I can, and during the process of cleaning I realized there were other places I need to put that grease. Not only do I need to put it on each side, apparently this thing remains still. It's this changer platform mechanism that does the moving back and forth. Let me see if I can get it to move, just kind of give you an idea. Come on, baby. I guess she don't want to move right now. Anyway, down here along this edge, it goes underneath this nut, this bolt head, and it also goes underneath. Let me get this light over here. It goes underneath this bolt head also, and you can see the shiny area along the edge. So that's going to have to be greased. Apparently, this thing also moves back and forth, or the wheel, as it turns, causes this pin to move in and out here. So I better put a little grease along this edge right here, maybe a little bit. And I don't want to over grease it, but you don't want to under grease it either. I'm done. You know, I don't know anything about these things. I don't have the proper grease or whatever it is I need. I have a friend who works on RCA changers all the time, and I asked him to take a look at it and give it a servicing, but he gave me this big song and dance about how he only works on RCAs and he doesn't know anything about voice and music. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you know, that's like saying I only know how to fix a Philco radio. I don't know how to fix Silvertone. Doesn't make sense to me, but like I said, I'm not a turntable repairman or servicer. I just did the best I could on this one. Don't take what I did as gospel. What I told you may be entirely wrong. Even if it plays, I don't know. You know, so check with someone who knows what they're doing on your own turntable. I think what I've done will help this one quite a bit. I certainly didn't hurt it any. As with most console radios, this one also had little metal things driven into the bottom of the legs, and they get rusty and ragged over the years. They catch on the carpet. They were just terrible. Even though a lot of the old houses didn't have carpet, they just had, you know, throw rugs. I remember my grandma's house; she never had a rug in it except for a couple of throw rugs here and there. So I removed those things. They're just terrible. They were just pounded in with a nail or with a hammer. Went in about 1/4 of an inch is all. Grabbed them with a pair of vice grips and pulled them out. And I'm going to be replacing them with these little jewels. These are. I'll drill a hole, a pilot hole, and we'll put these in there, make things look a whole lot better. I just took a ruler and marked corner to corner and put an X in the center, and where they cross, that's where I'll be drilling the hole with my drill, and then just drive in this with a hammer. And these things are called, for anyone that might be interested, they're just let me see. They're called furniture glides, soft touch. This is 1 1/4 inches in diameter, and I got them at Lowe's. I think they were $2.20 for 4 of them. Alright, that's all you need. You don't need to slam it so hard that you split it. Well, that's pretty good. Only 3 to go. Okay, the wave magnet antenna and what's left of the box is in. However, now is a good time to check out the back of a radio if you have one that has masonite back. This one here is all loose. The nails have come out over the years. So I'm just going to go ahead. Now's the time to do it. You know, go ahead and drive a few nails in all the way around. Brand new nails. One last tip. When you put new nails in to refasten the backing, don't use the old holes. Move to the side a little bit. Put your nails into fresh wood. You get a lot better bite with the nail, and you don't have to worry about it working out, which is what happened to the old ones. You know, you don't want that to happen. So eventually it's going to happen, but nice solid bite. This is the stage of the game where a lot of inexperienced radio restorers start to get in a hurry. Oh, we're getting close to the end. We got to get this thing, got to get it done. Well, that's the stage of the game when you need to slow down. It's the finishing touches that sometimes determine whether or not a radio, 1, is fully restored, or 2, how long it's going to last before it breaks again. The idea for putting a connector on this bass and treble switch was to go to Radio Shack, pick up a 2-pin connector, male and female, and solder one to these 2 wires, and solder the other connector to the 2 wires coming from the chassis. But of course, when I got there, you know, Radio Shack never wants to cooperate with anything you need. So what I did is I wound up buying a 4-pin connector and snipping the wires on both. It was all in one. It was an all-in-one power connector like this. So I cut it in half, snipped the wires on both of them. And what I'm going to do is remove these 2 wires that I had soldered on each switch, and I'll solder these on instead. Well, there it is, folks. That's the plug on the end of the switch, and here's the female side of it spliced into the 2 wires coming from the chassis. This is the base, and you know, they're a little bit long, but that's okay. I left them that way. All I got to do now is just push them together on the inside of the cabinet, and these can be removed at any time. And the chassis can be removed without soldering, unsoldering, or pulling this thing out of the front of the chassis and possibly breaking this clip again. So that's the way they should have done it to begin with. I don't know why they didn't.